What's a winsome approach to someone who defends abortion by arguing an unwanted pregnancy may cause great suffering and or lead to suicide? While killing is always immoral, compassion for the mother oftentimes stops our arguments from convincing many people.
Well, in this situation, let me back up for a second. I was going to say one thing. I want to start out differently. I understand the appeal to compassion. Unfortunately, this is part of the problem. The problem is, in order to be allegedly compassionate to one person, we do something terribly evil to another person. But it seems like it ain't so bad because we have good motives, and that is to be compassionate to the mother. Okay? So I'm just wondering if I were to face this and I wanted to use a tactical approach and I wanted to kind of strip this away layer by layer, what questions would I use? And maybe I'd say, I think being compassionate is really important. But how far does our commitment to compassion go? Can we do anything in virtue of compassion to one person? So let's just say I'm talking to somebody and I say, there's a person who's homeless, doesn't have any place to stay, doesn't even have a car to sleep in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your car and give it to him because I'm being compassionate to that person so he would have some place to sleep in. Is that okay? Because I'm being compassionate. So there's a counterexample. Now, I think sometimes when I raise counterexamples like this, people can see what I'm going to try to do, and so they rattle on and run right by it. In other words, they don't address it. Well, that's not the same thing. I'm talking about something different. That's where you need to gently pull them back. All I want to do is just answer this simple question. Do you think it's okay for me to take your car and give it to somebody else because I feel compassion to them? That's a simple question. Yes or no? Well, I'm sure they're going to say no. All right. So, then why is it okay for me to take somebody's life to be compassionate to another person? It's a fair question because I think that's what's going on here. And what happens, and this is what troubles me and why I paused at the beginning, because this compassion approach is difficult because if you disagree with the person who is making the compassion appeal, then you are considered the non-compassionate person. Okay? And that's awful. You're not compassionate. Wait a minute. I'm the one who is trying to protect the life of the innocent human being that you are suggesting ought to be sacrificed to make somebody else's life more livable. Even if the characterization there was completely accurate, that their life will be more livable and they'd be much happier. Is that a justifiable reason to kill somebody? By the way, this is what criminals do. Criminals take what isn't their own to make their lives easier and more satisfying. But we draw the line there. They're called criminals because what they take is not theirs to take, even though it improves their lives. So the difficulty in answering this question, now those who are listening just heard me walk through there and you're going, oh, well, that makes sense. But you usually can't get through that. Because the minute you start making the moral case the way I've done, people are going to charge you, maybe even silently in their heart, with being the non-compassionate person, and I'm just going to shrug you off. See, you pro-lifers, you don't really care. Look at this woman. Look at this woman. Look at what she's going to have to endure. All right? And so you don't, they are not willing to face the moral arithmetic, which is the thing that actually determines what is the proper compassionate thing to do. I mean, I can think of any really extreme case, all right? You're in a Nazi concentration camp, and here's a Jewish woman that's serving food for the commandant. She's from the camp, but she's serving. She's pressed into service in the household of the commandant. All right. You want to free that woman? Who is going to serve the food for the commandant? You're not being compassionate to the commandant. Now, this is a grotesquely extreme example, but sometimes you have to use a grotesquely extreme example in order to get people's attention. Okay? No one would say, you shouldn't liberate this woman because it's not compassionate to the commandant who loses a servant or slave labor, essentially. No one would say that. But there is a benefit that the commandant gets that he would have to sacrifice. All right? But obviously the weight morally is so much more on one side. Okay, so now here's what we're looking at. We're not talking about a prison camp intern being freed. We are talking about a child's life being saved. Isn't that even more extreme? We're talking about we're going to kill the child so mom isn't inconvenienced or maybe get really depressed and get suicidal. Well, look at if you just want to do simple math on this, if she carries to term and then gets suicidal and kills herself, then you still have, in the total equation, one dead person. Terrible. Don't want it. But don't you see that there's a difference between a woman killing herself and the woman killing the baby? And the killing the baby is guaranteed in abortion. The woman killing herself is not guaranteed. To be honest, most women respond really well to having a child because it's their child. My niece was raped when she was 14 and had a baby, carried to term, and my brother and his wife gave that baby up for adoption because she's a minor. She, her entire life, resented her parents because they took her baby away from her, even though the baby was conceived under those circumstances. The point I'm making here is you can't just assert that everything's going to be miserable for a woman who goes through an unwanted pregnancy. That's what's commonly asserted, but you can't just assume that. In most cases, I don't think it's like that. All right? Both of our daughters are adopted from surprise pregnancies. All right? And both of them had birth mothers who went through a lot of pain to give the baby up because of their emotional attachment to their own child. Now, they could have avoided by having abortion early on. That wouldn't have been without consequence, by the way, emotionally. But even so, it would have been, in some senses, one might think, easier because they are not taking a child that they've given birth to and given away. That's harder, probably, or at least that's the way people will put it. But even so, yes, it's hard, but that's a pain they endure rather than killing their own child. And even if they carry to term and keep the child, the burdens that are there, they may be burdensome, but does that justify proactively killing the child so you might not have bad feelings? This is how people's thinking on this, Amy, morally speaking, is so twisted. It is just so twisted. My wife worked for many years in a CPC, Crisis Pregnancy Center, and that's where I met her, actually, when she was working there, and I did an event for them. And she encountered woman after woman that was pregnant that wanted to get an abortion, and she said, why don't you carry to term and give the baby away to someone who wants the baby? And what they said is, I couldn't possibly give my baby away. So you're going to kill the baby now. That's the equation. I couldn't give my baby away, I mean emotionally, so I'm going to kill the baby now. Do you see? This is how twisted people's thinking has gotten on it. And that's the so-called compassion defense for abortion. So I think what I've done is cash this out in a very clear way. Of course, I'm presuming that the unborn is a full human being, which is scientifically true. And I've cashed it out in a very clear way, but do not count on cashing it out in this clear way and having the person you're talking with not dismiss you as an insensitive, unloving, non-compassionate person because you don't want to let a mother kill her own baby to make her life easier. People's thinking is very twisted on this issue.
And I think the reason why people become so confused as soon as we start talking about this topic comes back to what we always say about when you're discussing the pro-life view, and that is, what is the unborn? Because nobody would say, I should have a right to kill this woman's child, or this woman should have a right to kill her 2-year-old or her 3-year-old because the 3-year-old's making her feel suicidal. Nobody would say that. And the reason why is because they're clear on the fact that this is a human being. But as soon as we're talking about the unborn and that becomes unclear, you start getting all of these strange ideas like the one you just mentioned, Greg. I would rather my child be dead than be with someone else, as if that's indicating their love for the child. It doesn't make sense. But part of it is they aren't seeing the unborn as a human being who's already in existence, who's already alive, who's already their child. So ultimately, that's going to have to be addressed. But of course, if you're answering this question, the way you answer is going to depend on who's asking you. Is the person actually pregnant and feeling suicidal? Well, probably a reasoned response like this isn't going to be where you're going to start, because there's a lot of emotion involved. As you said, Greg, it's going to be hard to get to the reasoning. And in that case, you do have to begin with saying, just assuring them, yes, I think the woman is important. I don't want anyone to feel suicidal. I'm here for you. I can help you. But let's think about what exactly it is that you want to do. What does it mean to have an abortion? What are you doing? What is that inside of you? And Greg, I thought your examples were so clear and so good. If anyone can get to that point where they can make that argument, I just think that argument is so good. But you're going to have to address the question of what the unborn is, or none of this will make sense to people.
You know, you said something that I want to draw attention to. It was a great response here, Amy. But you said that it's beholden upon us that we are sensitive to the emotional concerns and the needs of the mother. Okay, we get it. We understand that. Okay, here's what came to me then. This is, by the way, this is characteristic of pro-lifers. Although we've been characterized as only caring about the baby and not caring about the mother, this is an unjust canard. This is libel, because it's just not true. There are more crisis pregnancy centers in the country than there are abortion clinics. All right, we are lining up. I've given dozens of fundraisers. That was how I met my wife, for CPCs to raise money, and people are coming deep in their pockets in order to take care of women. Where is the other side? Where are the pro-choice organizations stepping up in compassion next to the woman who decides to carry to term, and they're going to help her with the burdens that she's facing? Where is it? They have nothing to say but kill that baby. That's our compassionate response. I know you have emotional needs. I know you have financial needs. We're not going to do anything for that. We're going to charge you $1,000 to kill the baby. That's our answer. Pardon me for getting emotional about this, but this is the way it lines out. And we're the ones who are being called non-compassionate? Really? We don't get a dime. Not a dime from saving a baby. All right? We come out of pocket, pro-lifers do, to save the baby and to save the mom. People have no idea who haven't countenance, who haven't trafficked in that world. It's unbelievable. Every time I speak at a CPC banquet, I always get there the day before, and the earlier part of the day from the banquet, I go to the facility. I tour the facility. I look at every single thing they're doing to help the mothers, all the packets of diapers and bottles and blankets and all the things that the women get, the way they teach them crafts and ways to, manage their finances. They help them with life support. We are doing this. And so for somebody to say, well, you're just not sensitive, you're just not compassionate, open your eyes. You tell me how compassionate it is to say you either kill this baby or we're not going to do a dad-blasted thing for you. Really, that's the compassionate response? Please.